let's talk to Laura Trevelyan, a US journalist, a former BBC anchor in the States who's been covering the politics there for more than 20 years. Laura, give us your reaction to Joe Biden's announcements tonight.
Well, Carol, I'm at Heathrow Airport and I literally was just landing when your producer called as the news broke. So this is quite an extraordinary moment. And what strikes me really, first of all, is that the president must have been thinking about doing this today at this time and this moment, probably for the last 48 hours. All the while in public, his aides have been saying that he's defiant, insisting that he's going to fight on. But the choreography of this, the preparation that has gone into his statement, the composing of it, that he's stepping down for the good of the party and the country, but it electrifies the 2024 race, Carol. Donald Trump has already called into CNN saying that Joe Biden is the most horrible president in the history of the world, a sign for sure that he's concerned about what this means. But now the Democratic Party faces a question. Will there be a coronation of Kamala Harris, the vice president, or will there be, as many party figures have signaled that they wanted, as subtly as they could while Mr. Biden wouldn't step down, that there should be now a mini coronation, a mini convention, mini hustings, so that by the time of the 19th of August, when Democrats gather in Chicago, maybe it's actually a contested convention. And the delegates there, the 3,900 odd delegates that had pledged to support Mr. Biden, they then get a choice. They hear from the candidates themselves. So it's an extraordinary moment, Carol, exhilarating, both exciting and terrifying for Democrats, for the country, who've been telling pollsters that they thought the president was just too old. Does this shake up the race? Does it reduce Donald Trump's leads? So many questions, Carol.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, clearly the Democrats will want to avoid a damaging contest. How do you think it's likely to play out from here?
Well, that is the big question. All eyes now are on the Democratic National Committee. Now that the president, the leader of the party, has said he's stepping down, he said he's endorsing the vice president. What do they do with that information? Do they say, well, she should be our candidate? If they do that, it's quite possible that there's a backlash. There are other people waiting on the wings. Donors, for example, have been talking about the need to vet other potential candidates like Gavin Newsom. So my guess is that we get a statement later on this evening as to how the party is going to proceed, whether it's going to be a coronation or whether it's going to be a contested convention. And then if it's a contest, well, see who else throws their hat into the ring. Who else will want to challenge the vice president? These are all the questions churning in American politics right now, Carol.
And you were saying you think it could have a really dramatic effect on the presidential race. Of course it will, because it completely changes the characters involved. And how is it going to be for Kamala Harris, who, despite having been vice president, has not had a particularly high profile and hasn't proved particularly popular?
Well, the vice presidency is one of the worst jobs in American politics, of course. And Kamala Harris is saddled by the fact that in 2020, she wasn't considered by Democratic Party members a good enough candidate to win the nomination. Remember, she stood against Joe Biden, and he was the one that was successful. As vice president, she's been saddled with the horrendous policy job of overseeing the border with Mexico and what were record numbers of migrants crossing. Though those figures have dropped, Carol, dramatically in recent months. So that could be a plus for her. She's also recently found her voice on abortion, for example, some 2 years after Roe versus Wade, the federal right to an abortion was overturned. She has been speaking out on behalf of those women who now don't have access to abortion. So these are things that could be pluses for her. She can also argue she's been at the president's side. She understands Ukraine. She understands China. She understands the Middle East, the foreign policy challenges of the moment. But I think what won't go down well is some members of the progressive left saying we should just give this to what would be the first black woman ever to run for president of the United States. I think there are enough people in the party who have signaled that they would like to see a contest and like to see Kamala Harris potentially earn the nomination by defeating others, say Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, Gavin Newsom of California, if he runs. So there's all to play for, Carol.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the statement that Donald Trump has put out in the last few minutes on his platform, Truth Social. His statement says, crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve and never was. Trump's statement continues, he only attained the position of president by lies, fake news, and not leaving his basement. And he goes on to say all those around him, including his doctor and the media, knew he wasn't capable of being president, and he wasn't. He writes, we will suffer greatly because of his presidency, but we will remedy the damage he has done very quickly. Make America great again. So Donald Trump, who talked after that attempt on his life of how he'd thrown out his original speech and he wanted to have unity at the heart of his message, that doesn't seem to have lasted very long, saying crooked Joe Biden wasn't fit to run, certainly not fit to serve, and never was. I just wonder, though, how Donald Trump will face up to Kamala Harris when she steps into the role as his main rival.
Well, it will be interesting to see, but you can see there already the line of attack the Republicans are going with, which is if Joe Biden is not fit to stand for a second term, then how come he's fit to be president until the inauguration in January of next year? So, and that potentially is a problem for Kamala Harris. If she emerges as the front runner, she will be asked by Republicans, did you cover up the decline in President Joe Biden's mental acuity? What did you know and when did you know it? Were you, in effect, the shadow president? So this is one line of attack. The other line of attack from Republicans clearly is that they're claiming that the 14 million Democratic Party voters who voted for Joe Biden are now the subject of a coup because their nominee has been forced out of the race by a cadre of Democratic elites. In fact, even the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, was talking on the Sunday shows this morning about trying to mount some kind of a legal challenge if Joe Biden were forced out of the race, as they put it. But Carol, to answer your question about how would Donald Trump fare if he is indeed up against Kamala Harris, well, you know, he doesn't always deal that well with women necessarily. He always seems to feel a bit more comfortable in a world where men his own age are in charge. And to be up against a black woman, someone who he will say is a radical leftist from San Francisco, a prosecutor. Well, I guess it will be such a fascinating race if that's how it shapes up. She is someone who's very good at prosecuting a case. And if she is given the job of prosecuting the case against Donald Trump, that's one that we can see in the past few days from what she's been saying, that she will attack that with relish.
Laura Trevelyan, really good to speak to you. Laura Trevelyan, former BBC US anchor. Really good to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carol.